Hello to everyone watching UATV. I'm Oles Gerjuk, and today we are discussing snap parliamentary elections taking place in Ukraine. It is not an exaggeration to say that this year the Central Election Commission has faced some of its toughest challenges in Ukrainian history. After ensuring that democratic norms and transparency were kept during the two extremely heated rounds of this year's presidential election, and after the new president dismissed the parliament in his very first address to the nation, the Central Election Commission had just 2 months to organize snap parliamentary elections. Hopefully, they will be fair, but we will get to these analyses later, after the first statements of the international observers will be made public. Now, it is important to discuss what hopes and fears can we put on the 9th convocation of the Verkhovna Rada. And for that, we invited Yevhen Bystritsky, Doctor of Philosophy, President of the Ukrainian Philosophy Foundation and Chairman of the Supervisory Council of the National Exit Poll 2019, to our studio. So, hello, Mr. Bystritsky, and thank you for being with us today. So, as we cannot really talk about the polls and an estimated results of this run, because we have to remain in this silent mode in order not to advertise any political party, let's talk about the election campaign. What are your thoughts on that, on its transparency, and maybe on the respectfulness of the opponents to one another?
Okay. I think that just, this election campaign is unusual for Ukraine.
Why?
If we compare this campaign with the previous campaign after the Euromaidan revolution, if you remember, after the revolution, after the elected by the new president Poroshenko, that time the parliamentary forces were provided with 1 month to organize a new coalition, to confirm that they have coalition in the parliament. And
the
only
parliament is
after
functional.
that, they were, only after that, the new president, that time it was Poroshenko, announced about the early parliamentary elections. This year, in fact, political forces had no time, this time 1 month more, as it was in the previous time, to think about, to rebuild themselves, to be reformed, in fact. So, this situation unusual because, in fact, we have many new organized, new built parties, like, for instance, People's Servant, like European Solidarity, the same. This party was transformed. Yeah. The previous party of the Bloc Petra Poroshenko was transformed in a new party. Then we get, in fact, new party Strength and Honor. We have the new party Opposition Platform and For Life.
Yes, after
we have a new party, The Voice. So, and in addition to that, new parties, in fact, had no time just to build themselves in an appropriate way. So, for instance, as far as I understand, for instance, the political force, People's Servant, is, this mostly a kind of virtual party. They have to build themselves.
Yes,
built in sense to be organized in regions, to have the more or less established representative leaders, regional leaders, etc., etc. So, because of that, this campaign is, let me say so, is much more virtual than previous one.
Yes, because Servant of the People has just appeared after the victory of Volodymyr Zelensky.
The People's Choice now, the same relies more on the words. much more than the
actual actions.
These actions of the parties, of the previous parties.
Yes, but what could you say about the behavior of the political parties, about their campaigning? Was it transparent? Was it fair? Was it clear? Or were there any black schemes used during the election campaign?
It happens so that I represent so-called civic movement or civic organization named by us as Election Council of Ukraine. What we did and what we are doing, in fact, we organized discussions between independent professional civic experts, independent experts, with representative, empowered representative of the most rating political forces. I mean, first of all, 5 of them. Maybe the People's Servant, European.
Yes, we cannot name the ratings.
My
for
feeling,
now.
and I was surprised, even by my feeling, that there were indeed new faces, new persons. New in which sense? If in terms of the previous deputies of the parliament, you could say that I know that after behind this or that person there is kind of some business forces or some oligarchs or some this leader who are close to the business, big business first of all.
So basically,
in terms
money
of the new faces,
was always
money
behind
them.
Politicians.
In case of the new faces, I didn't have such feeling.
But didn't
Before
you have
us,
such
there were
feeling?
3 persons that expressed their own, views. Of course, their own views as empowered representative of, of political, this or that political force.
But the difference is,
this is new feeling.
Did you have this impression because you thought that there was no one behind these new faces, or that you just don't know who is behind new faces?
No, I think their behavior showed that new faces are indeed much more free,
independent,
and not related to this or that big power or big business power or big business than as it was before. So in addition, in terms of the ideas they expressed, their ideas, by the way, were too close each other. I was surprised. In
you
fact,
mean only? You mean we're speaking right now about the fresh faces, or we compare all of the political parties that are taking part?
Both. In fact,
and the run.
Unfortunately, representatives of the opposition platform for life refused our invitation. So we have only a kind of the really new faces, new persons, even included new views from the old party Batkivshchina, the same. All of them expressed ideas that were, too close
to each other.
This is for me was quite, surprised. And in addition, in fact, we had people who looked at the same direction, in the direction of the European integration, in the direction of the need to intensify reforms, democratic reforms in Ukraine, who are going to fight corruption and to transform or reform, improve anti-corruption institutions in Ukraine. So many of their ideas coincided between them and directed in the right, this right way, in the right direction, from the point of view independent civic experts. This is very interesting.
And this is
new
very
feeling.
important, yes, that basically the majority of the political parties are not very much divided about with their different agenda, and that their ideas go in accordance with the Ukrainian reform agenda.
I'm slightly afraid only the water line that could divide them, and in accordance with which the new opposition, not opposition platform and the For Life party will be in the position. There could be opposition between parties who are, let me say so, more pro-Ukrainian parties. What does it mean? Who are fighting for, you know, this for Ukrainian, for promoting Ukrainian language, Ukrainian culture, who promoting much more in intensive way the pro-European choices, and the parties who will not be, you know, who will be much more neutral in terms of the pro-Ukrainian, you know, the orientations.
Who will be lacking this national identity as the Ukrainian political party?
Yeah, I divide national identity, ethnic, cultural national identity, and the civic identity or the political identity. I mean, something combination of both of them.
So you think that pro-Ukrainian political parties will get into the opposition to the coalition?
It's difficult to predict right now, but I am talking about the waterline between potential opposition, political opposition, each other.
Yes.
Yeah, that's. In some points, they will coincide, of course. For instance, in terms of the fighting against corruption, all of them are for that, you know, this. Or what relates to the, for instance, the de-oligarchization or demonopolization of the economy of Ukraine. Maybe they will contradict. This is two blocks will contradict each other what relates to the land reform.
Because so that could be a stumbling block.
Yes, of course. But in other cases, in other directions, they will coincide. And this is positive feeling.
Yes, and this is new actually for Ukraine. That would be very interesting to dig more into this land reform, well, basically the difference in their views and approaches towards implementation of the land reform. But unfortunately, today, because of this silence mode, we cannot really be so much precise as we would like to. But I also wanted to ask you about this new approach to campaigning, because you remembered about fresh and new faces, and then these newly emerged political parties have been talking about the clearance, so to say, of the old political elite and replacement it by the new faces. In
terms of the land reform, I would like to say that only two political parties, rating political parties, who have, you know, the higher ratings, are against it. This is Batkivshina, this is the constant position of Batkivshina, and the opposition platform For Life. Other parties are for, you know, providing a land market. Of course, after the clarification conditions on which such market could be provided.
Well, speaking of the approach to the campaigning, so if we remember this fresh faces entering the parliament, well, let's see what results we're going to have later on. You said that there wasn't enough time for them to introduce themselves to the society, to present their agenda, but still, it did sound promising to many people, as country has been drowning in corruption. There has been no trust to the state institutions. So we know the latest survey that 8 to 12% of Ukrainians only trusted the old parliament. But after a while, the expert society noticed that many fresh faces are lacking competence. Would you agree with that? And what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with this statement, of course. Of course, they have not gained enough experience to right from the first days in the parliament to act in the right directions, and they should be much more trained. But of course, among them there are elites in each party. Many former representative of civil society organizations. For instance, at our discussion, there were many former experts from think tanks, independent think tanks of Ukraine. I could name it, but no, will not do it. You know this. So I think that, of course, my view now is they will be being trained, and it was absolutely clear wish from their side to know how to do better for
so
the
they're
for
inspired
reforms.
to improve.
Yeah, they expired. At least they they are open to be trained, to know how to provide better reforms in the right directions. So, and the problem you touched, much more deeper than just problem of the new deputies. The problem how they will work or establish dialogue with civil society organizations, with independent think tanks. My view is that they will be needed to establish some bridge, some exchange of views.
Of course, that is always needed.
Involve, independent experts for the, this joint or common work.
Well, we will see whether this dialogue will be productive with the civil society. Now we have only about 3 minutes until the end of our discussion because we're running out of time. I would like to discuss the national exit poll with you, and I have your quote, since I just explained to the audience once again that Mr. Yevhen Bystrytsky is the chairperson of the supervisory board of the National Exit Poll 2019. So you said that the elections from the exit poll point of view will be extremely difficult. They're more difficult even than the presidential ones. In the end, the exit poll results will be interesting because in these elections, it's important that the first 5 parties now, as sociology says, they are already more or less defined, but there are at least 3 more parties where there may be an error in research that is very close to each other in this 5% threshold. So could you please tell us how accurate do you expect the polls to be, and how do you reach this accuracy?
A couple of words about my impression. Today I visited at least 3 precincts, or the 3 polling stations, together with the people from the Supervisory Council of the National Exit Poll. It was interesting that people who were polled by our, of our people from the National Exit Poll, this looked quite optimistic. They had no kind of shadow of pessimism. This is very interesting. In fact, these elections, during these elections, I mean parliamentary elections, people do not just feel a kind of opposition to this or that political force. They are open and answer to any questions in terms of the questions in the this exit poll, the questionnaire, and but the problem is that, of course, national exit poll conducted regarding the only half of the seats in the parliament, because it relates only to proportional system of the parliament.
Yeah. The majoritarian candidates cannot be counted and cannot be included in the survey.
Unfortunately, and it could add to the figures of the national exit poll some, some maybe, percentage. I don't know. I could not say what will be results. But
well, we'll see soon.
But as far as I understand, there are no serious violations of the law, election law. maybe you just know this in some separate regions of Ukraine. I didn't hear something about the violations in Kyiv, not yet, at least. So, and what else?
Well, that's important that you explained about the national exit poll, that it's going to be accurate, but it's not the final version about
it should be accurate. Why? Because at least in the end of the rating list, there are at least 2-3 political forces, I will not name them, you know, who will compete for the to come over the barrier, or the election barrier, to be members of the parliament. And this is very serious. And because of that, this exit poll should be much more accurate
than the presidential one.
Even than presidential one.
Great. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your comments, and thank you for having time to come to the studio. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was Yevhen Bystritsky, Doctor of Philosophy, President of the Ukrainian Philosophy Foundation, and a Chairman of the Supervisory Council of the National Exit Poll 2019, commenting on snap parliamentary elections that are currently underway in Ukraine. I'm Oles Gurdyuk. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned with UATV as we continue covering this important political event.